What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another Street Fighter Duel video, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are having a wonderful week. In today's video, we are going to be doing another guide. This time we're going to be taking a look at awakening and dupe management. That is right, you guys, we're going to be taking a look at how to use your roster to its fullest extent and how to go ahead and ration each and every single one of your dupes in Street Fighter Duel. But before we go ahead and get into all of that and more, make sure if you guys haven't already done so that you smash that like button and subscribe. And let's just go ahead and get into today's topic. So I will go ahead and try to make this as quick and simple on all of you as humanly possible. Now, there are multiple different ways that you can go about certain things in this game, and I will be giving you guys my opinions on how you should be managing your dupes in today's video. But just keep in mind that this is just my opinion. This is the way that I like to manage my dupes, and this is the most efficient way that I have found to go ahead and build up my roster. So therefore, if you might have another additional tip to add, go ahead and throw it in the comment section down below. Maybe you'll help somebody out. But with that all out of the way, let's just go ahead and jump into it. So the first thing I want to go ahead and do is talk about which characters are going to be your designated feeder characters. Now, a feeder character is basically going to be what we see down here in this lineup. These are basically the game's designated feeder characters. Now, it may not seem that way just looking at these characters on the surface, because you got some pretty big names in here like Ryu and Ken. You know, even got Dan in there, and who would want to dupe off a Dan, right? But jokes aside, when it comes to these characters here, these are going to be the main characters that you are going to be using for dupes and to build up your characters, besides actual copies of the character in question that you are building. So first and foremost here, the thing that I always recommend to people, because we do still have the Global Awakening going on. If you aren't aware, Global Awakening is still a thing. It has another 4 days on it, and you will be able to pick up this box if you finish it up. Now, as you guys can see, I've already done this, but for those of you who have not yet, this is going to be a video that should help you out quite a bit on this, because this is something you'll definitely want to take advantage of. So with that said, guys, the characters that you're going to be duping off are pretty much going to be down here. It's pretty obvious that the game wants you to dupe them off, because you are going to be seeing quite a few of them. They are going to drop quite often, and one of the biggest things about these characters that you'll kind of want to pay attention to as you are building them up for duping is you'll want to pay attention to their bio for these different achievements, because you will be able to get different things until you get the final one unlocked here, which of course means you're going to basically be able to get, as you guys can see with Rufus here, you're going to be able to get yourself some extra gems, which is really nice. Now, of course, this stops and caps off at S+ grade, so you aren't going to have to go to triple S or anything like that with any of these feeder characters, but all of the different factions that you are going to need to worry about doing this with are going to be represented here, meaning Wind, Thunder, and Fire are all going to be here. And of course, with any of the other characters, like your Masters or your Infernal types, etc., this isn't going to be a system that is going to apply to them, so we aren't going to have to talk about them in this video. So these are, of course, going to be your feeder characters. So let's talk about how we're going to be using them, right? So if we go over to Awaken, the first thing that I want to go ahead and do is point out the Awakening preview, because the Awakening preview is pretty much going to explain to you exactly what I'm going to be talking about in today's video. So one of the worst things that you could do with any of your purple characters and up is use them for dupes when you don't need to. And by this, what I mean is, if for instance you were using dupes of Chun-Li right here in order to build her up to the next rank, you would be doing it wrong. And this is something that I see people doing wrong quite often, is they just decide, okay, well, I have dupes of this character that I'm building, I might as well just go ahead and use the dupes on said character, because, well, then I can go ahead and just use other things on these other characters, etc. That is not what you want to do. You do not want to use dupes of a particular character that is going to be of a purple grade or higher unless it specifically calls for it, because there are going to be specific intervals along the way as you are building up said character that you are going to need that dupe. And if you're wasting it in here or in any of these places here, you're doing it wrong, and you are going to end up stopping yourself from progressing even further than you already could have. So basically, if I wanted to go ahead and give you guys a prime example of what I'm talking about here, let's go ahead and take a look at a character such as, well, let's go ahead and take a look at Abel here. So Abel here is a character that is a prime example of one that I would want to dupe off. And the reason why is because this Abel here is going to actually need to be duped off in order to be able to go up to A+ tier. And A+ tier is specifically important because if you guys take a look here, you are going to notice that once we get into the deeper awakening levels, you are going to need an A+ copy or two, depending on where you're at with the awakening of said character, in order to get them to the next grade up. So an A+ version of this Abel would be very nice because, as you guys can see, I am getting close to the point where I am eventually going to need those. Now, if I were to go in and maybe, for instance, use these Abels for someone else, then I would just be wasting them because down the road I will need them for the Abel that I'm actually building. So that is why I say that most oftentimes you want to be careful with any of your purple characters. Any of your purple characters you want to be very cognizant of how you're using, because if I were to do that, then that would stall my progression down the road in building up this character. So that is something that you really want to keep in mind. Another thing that I would like to point out about this is, say for instance, if we use my Chun-Li as an example here, my Chun-Li requires an S+ wind fighter to go ahead and build herself up to the next grade. So I could go ahead and use one of these characters here and totally waste them and really hurt my account CP, as well as just taking one of these characters off my roster in general, which wouldn't be a good thing. Or what I could do, since I know that I need an S+ fighter for the wind faction, is I could come over here, take a look at these characters here, and look at some of my fodder characters and go, you know what? I'm going to build one of these up to S+, and then I'm going to feed that to my Chun-Li, get her to the next awakening level, and once that happens, she is going to be able to go up to the next place in the game that she would need to go, and then I could go ahead and just move on from there and not have to have worried about wasting some of these characters in this line, all of which I would end up using at some point or another. So that is where these characters that are your feeder characters really come in clutch, is in instances like right here, because these characters you do see very often, as I've mentioned. And say for instance, if I wanted to just continue to build up this Ibuki here, I could go ahead, just build her up, feed her different memories that I don't need for these different characters, and then I could go ahead and get her up to the point where I could feed her to Chun-Li, no muss, no fuss, and we could move on to the next point. So that's pretty much what we've got there as far as the reasoning behind that, and that is why these feeder characters are oh so important. So if you look at this track here, really at the end of the day, when it comes to feeding these characters to your characters that you're actually wanting to build, you're eventually going to get to a point where you're going to need tons and tons of copies of the same specific character that you are building. So by that, what I mean is, once we get into the red here, you're going to notice we are going to still be able to use one S+ memory, which you guys already saw here with my Chun-Li. But then once we get past that, if I want to get up to triple S, then I am going to need 2 dupes of Chun-Li at A+. Now this is really where the game starts to stall you out, is getting to triple S, because getting 2 copies of an A+ character from any specific faction, specifically if they're any of the purple characters, is going to be a little bit difficult. It's going to take a little bit of time. And for those of you who are unaware, I have spent a decent chunk of money into this game, and with that being said, I'm going to have even more options at getting some of these characters, and some free-to-plays out there, well, any free-to-play out there, but you know what I mean. So that means that this is going to be even harder for those players. So you can see as to why I would need to make a video such as this in order to explain just how important it is not to be wasting these dupes of these fighters. Even if you are nowhere close to this point, it is not recommended, nor is it a smart move to you be using these dupes, even though you might sit there and think to yourself, oh, well, you know, I'm so far away from being able to triple S this character or get this character to any of these other grades here that I would need that A+ copy anyway. I might as well just use it for this other character for the short term, so that way I can build them up to the next tier, and eventually maybe I'll get another copy down the road. That is the wrong way of doing it. This game, while it may seem pretty generous, there are going to be times where you're going to get stuck, and when you get stuck and you aren't able to progress through some of these different things, specifically like story mode, you are going to get less and less tokens to summon, which means you are going to be getting less copies of characters in general. And when that is the case, and you do get stuck like that, and you don't get those tokens and you don't get those summons, you are going to see far less of these characters. And so if you waste these dupes, you are going to be in bad shape. So like for instance, if we take a look here, a really good example is my poison right now. So my poison right now, she is going to be triple S, right? So this triple S poison is going to need an A+ dupe of poison herself in order to go up to the next star level. Now, for those of you who are unaware, these characters, once you get up to triple S, you cannot upgrade their grade anymore, but you can go ahead and basically like prestige them. You can add a star down here to them. So as you can see here, my Ryu has 2 stars. That means I have fed 2 more A+ dupes to him since going to triple S. So we're about to do that with my poison, who has 1 star down here. So that means I have fed already 1 A+ dupe to her, and I'm about to feed another one. If you guys are wondering, yes, the costume characters do pick up that star as well. So if you take a look here, you'll notice that my Sakura is actually going to be paired with my poison. And with that being said, being that she is paired with my poison, she has that star that you see there. So what we're about to test and what we're about to prove, for those of you who haven't seen this yet, is once I go ahead and feed another dupe to my poison, you're going to see not only a star pop up for my poison here and her stats increase, which the stats aren't going to increase astronomically for doing this part, but they do count as an increase. So any stat increase in this game that you can get, or any idle game that you can get, is always welcome. So you will be able to see that as well. But you're not just going to see that star be added to poison here, you're also going to see it get added to Sakura. So we'll go ahead and do that before the end of this video as well, just so that way you guys can see that process in action. So really, with that being said, Awakening Preview is very important. It's going to basically give you a cheat sheet on what you're looking at down the road and in the future of how you're building these characters. That way you know that you aren't going in and totally wasting things that you shouldn't, because these are some of the most important resources in the entire game, is going to be your dupes. So like I said, guys, you want to go in here, you want to make sure, if you take a look here, these are going to be, again, your main fodder characters, but as you are going along, and remember, those S+ characters, that even these guys, even these fodder characters at S+ are important. You want to take a look here and kind of see who it is that you need to build up to that next S+ from your feeder characters, just so you can unlock all these different gems. That is important. But just remember that once you get them to that S+, that's pretty much going to be the main place that you're going to need those characters in order to continue moving your other characters that are more important along. So that's very important information to have, because those feeder characters, as you can see just by looking at this, are specifically designed really in this game in order to be used for these purposes, where there is not going to be needed an actual dupe of the actual character, but instead just a character of the same faction. That is where those feeder characters come in, and that is who you want to use. You do not want to use any of these other characters. Like for instance, if I were to click on my Ryu here, if I were to feed him like this, that would be god awful. You never want to do that. You do not want to do that. This character in general is a feeder character. You don't want to be feeding him better, rarer characters. It's because these characters here, you're going to see far less than a Ryu, but you're going to be able to see all the time, because he is going to be a lower rarity, and he's going to be a character you're just going to see quite often. So with that being said, let's go ahead and use a couple of examples here in action so you guys can kind of see. So I told you guys we'll do the poison thing. We're going to do that real quick here. So let's go ahead, make an A+ poison out of these 2 poison dupes here. So we'll just go ahead and do this. And remember, we are going to feed her to our main poison. So we'll do that real quick. And you guys are going to notice right there, it is a small incremental stat increase. It isn't a ton. It isn't like when you awaken these characters, you know, from S to S+ to SS to triple S, etc. But it is still an increase. So we'll go ahead and do that real quick. Just go ahead and build up our poison. There we go, got a star. So there's that. So now if we go back, you'll notice that Sakura also has a 2nd star now, and her stats have increased. So there you go. We now have a 2nd star on our Sakura, and we have a 2nd star on our poison, and that is kind of what you're looking at there. So really, guys, when it comes to applying all of this to the game in the real world, really all you got to do is just pay attention to this. This right here, the Awakening Preview, really does save you, and it's one of those things where if you're a brand new player to the game, I'd forgive you for making these mistakes and using these dupes in the wrong way. It's easy to do, especially if you've never played a game like this before, but if you use this Awakening preview, it really does break it all down for you, tells you when you'll need that dupe of that specific character, but it also kind of gives you an idea of kind of what the devs actually have in mind as far as how you should be progressing them. So hopefully this is something that helps you guys out and makes things make a little bit more sense to everyone out there, because really when you get to the point where you need these S+ versions of these characters, I have seen people feed just the worst types of characters to their other characters, and while they are building up a good character, maybe you don't want to be wasting all these other characters just because you're a little impatient or you aren't necessarily aware of how to use your dupes and manage your dupes correctly. And at the end of the day, having a large roster of characters in this game is going to be one of the most rewarding and important things you could actually do, because not only does it apply to your full account CP, but it's also going to help you get through different content, because this is not a game where you're just going to have one roster or one line of characters rather and just use that for everything without any variance. You are going to need some of these other characters, and with that said, it is very, very important to know some of this information. Now, one little thing I do want to throw in here at the end is just as an aside, for those of you who are wondering, you are going to also, as you are summoning, get specific characters that are just meant to be literally just trashed. So these fighters right here are not characters you actually use. So what you would actually do is you would want to go into our Awakening again, and then if we go to dismiss, you can auto dismiss, and then the game will automatically dismiss those characters that we just showed you that you aren't ever going to use for anything else. And then that way you get some extra stuff like breakstones and things just for getting rid of those characters. So you can do it this way, that way it automatically does it, that way you don't have to worry about having to come in here and manually do it and interrupt the summoning session or what have you. So that's just a little aside in here while we're talking about Awakening and all these fodder characters. But anyway, you guys, hopefully this was something that is beneficial to all of you out there. I know that this is something that can be a little bit confusing, but hopefully this gives you guys some information that you may or may not have already known, and you can apply it and start improving your gains in the game. But with that being said, you guys, that's all just my opinion. Again, if you have your own tips on this, let me know in the comment section down below what those are, and you might help somebody out there who needs it. With all that out of the way, I'm gonna get out of here. You all take care. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, share, and subscribe on your way out, and until the next one, you all take care. Peace.